We've just seen that the tunnel is blocked for Heathrow, so people are literally getting out of cars and walking to there. We get some other news that was about to shatter our hopes of going to Thailand.
So I'm thinking, I'm sure I saw 14 days somewhere, but obviously the documents are saying what the documents say. So I said, what do we need to do then? He said, you can't fly today.
I'm Elise, this is Lawrence, and this is our baby Nyh.
We're travelling the world.
But we're going to be doing things a bit differently.
We're going to be travelling a month.
And coming back to the UK and working a month.
So we're going to be travelling month on, month off.
Until this little one goes to school in a couple of years.
We want to see if it's actually possible to travel the world
With a toddler in tow.
So subscribe and come along for the journey.
We're on our way to Thailand! And we're going to tell you exactly what you need to get in there in 2022. So this was going to be an informative video about how to get to Thailand, but what happened yesterday is not typical, and it was the most stressful travel day /
It was
ever.
bad. It was very, very bad.
So let's tell you what happened.
So to set the scene, we tested positive for COVID, me, Elmo and Nyh, 15 days before our flight to Thailand. And fortunately for us, the Thai requirements are that you have to be recovered for 14 days before you fly.
So we ordered our PCR test to come for 72 hours before the flight, as you're supposed to do. And on Monday, on the day that we're flying, we still have not got our results. We've got a problem. Our PCR test, which is one of the requirements to get on the plane, has not come back. You're supposed to do it 72 hours or less before your flight, and you send it off. We sent it off on Friday, priority post box. We haven't got it back, and we are flying in 6 hours.
So we left to go to the airport with 5 hours in hand so we could get an emergency test at the airport. And the airport said that you'd get your results within 4 hours, so we were assuming it would take a couple of hours for them to send through our new results. Bearing in mind, these results and the outcome of these results are irrelevant because we've got proof of recovery, but we still have to go through the processes. So we're now £400 down for PCR tests.
So, smugly, we thought we've overcome the problem, left for the airport early, only the tunnel on the way to Heathrow was blocked by protesters and the cars were not moving. People were literally getting out of the cars, walking 1.5 miles to Heathrow. So we're just stuck. We're waiting to have our emergency PCR test, and we've just seen that the tunnel is blocked for Heathrow, so people are literally getting out of cars and walking to there.
It's now midday, our flight leaves in 4.5 hours and we're still in the car about 1 mile from the actual airport, from the drop-off point.
Now we thought that this was going to be our biggest problem, but we were wrong. So we end up getting to the airport at about 1 o'clock, 3 hours before our flight leaves.
So now we need to go straight down and do our emergency PCR test, and they say allow 4 hours for the result.
So we get to the check-in, and the lady then tells me that my vaccine is out of date. So she goes off for 10 minutes and has to go and check whether we will be allowed to fly.
So the lady comes back 10 minutes later. She says that it's okay to fly. However, our stopover was in Germany, Frankfurt, and they don't accept our proof of recovery. Now we need to go back down to the Express Test Centre and do an antigen test, and the results take half an hour. But that's just for the first leg to Germany. We still need the PCR to get to Thailand.
So we go back to the check-in desk, we've had our antigen test, and then we get some other news that was about to shatter our hopes of going to Thailand.
So while we're waiting for the results of the antigen test, the chap starts going through our paperwork, makes a few phone calls and says to us, you're 1 day early. You're not allowed to fly today. You have to fly on the 15th day, which would be tomorrow. He showed me on the Lufthansa, which is the airline that we were flying with, on their website, and he said at least 15 days. So I'm thinking, I'm sure I saw 14 days somewhere, but obviously the documents are saying what the documents say. So I said, what do we need to do then? He said, you can't fly today.
So at this point, we are 99.9% sure that we are going home. So at this point, we still haven't even received our PCR tests, and we've been there for an hour and a half.
So in a last ditch attempt, this 15 days just didn't make sense to me. So I reread all of the requirements on the embassy website, on our website, and on the airline. And it said more than 14 days. So I'm literally have my fingers out counting in front of it. 7th, 8th, 9th, and it was 15 days. So we were flying on the day that we were allowed to fly, but it was worded different. On the Thai embassy, it was more than 14 days, and on the Lufthansa, it was at least 15, which are the same thing, but the guy couldn't translate that onto the people he was talking to, his superiors, so they were just refusing our entry. So I was pleading with him, please recheck it, I'm sure we're in the right, we're allowed to fly.
So luckily, one of his colleagues overheard and came over to the guy and whispered in his ear that he thought that we had a point. So after about 8 more phone calls to German and Thai officials, they said that we could fly. But that was not the end of it.
So again, we'd chuffed with ourselves. We've made it through. This is amazing. We're going through security. It's about 3 o'clock, and we start putting our belongings on the belt that goes through the security check-in, and Elma gets her phone out and sees that there are about 15 missed calls from this mobile number. So it rings again and she's got it in her hand, so I answer it, and it's the chap from the front desk, and he says, I need to speak to you about your PCR. At this point, we hadn't received our PCR test, but because the palaver of the 15 days was going ahead, he obviously completely forgot that we hadn't even had our result back. So he said, you're not allowed to board the flight unless you've got your result. Can you come back to the main desk? So I said, look, we're just going through security. Let me call you back.
So now we're having our obligatory airport breakfast at 3:30 p.m. and my phone is ringing and ringing and ringing, and we're still having to ignore it, just praying that our PCR test comes back.
Now, obviously, we would have answered the phone if we thought we were screwing anyone over, but I know that if we went all the way back to the front, and even if the test results came back in 10 minutes, the gate would have closed at the front and we wouldn't have made it through security to actually board the plane. So we just thought, look, we've got to risk it, just ignore the call, and at least we can literally stand next to the gate doors until they close the gate. We can wait for our PCR test without having to go through security again.
It's now about 3:55. The boarding closes in about 15 minutes and we still have not received our PCR tests. It was horrendous. Our whole hopes of going to Thailand rested on whether these test results came back early and within the next 10 minutes.
So we're refreshing our emails every 15 seconds. Finally, 4 o'clock, email comes through, my test results are in, I'm positive, but obviously we have proof of recovery, but we're still waiting for Elise's result.
So probably the longest 4 minutes went by, and then bing, my phone goes off, we get the other test result through, and we are literally jumping up and down, can't believe our luck at this point. So we get to the gate, they are straight on us, there's 2 people come straight away to us and says, have you got your PCR test to board? So he's obviously phoned through to them.
Boarded the flight. Hallelujah. Until we get to Bangkok. See those wrinkles? From this flight. Those wrinkles.
I can't believe it. I can actually cry. So we check into our hotel and we have to have a PCR test when you get here as well. So we go and have our PCR tests and we wait till the morning to get our results.
We get a phone call at 8 o'clock in the morning. and it says that me and Eleise are now negative, but Nyh is positive still. But the NHS app, where it shows your proof of recovery, doesn't show a proof of recovery for children, because if you're under 16 in the UK, you don't have an NHS app. So now we're thinking we can't prove that we've got proof of recovery for Nyh. And we've been on the phone from 8 o'clock in the morning until midday. And then we get this letter through the door that says we need to quarantine for 10 days.
So after about 15 phone calls with the nurse, we've sent through the documents about 4 times to 4 different people. Lawrence answers the phone and he says to me that there's nothing we can do, we've just got to quarantine. Except he was lying and we were free to go.